What's good? It's Woog. There's a fighter you need to know about at 140 who's not currently one of the ring's top 10 fighters, but who I look at as being a significant talent in the division. That's Dalton Smith. They've been pumping him up on Matchroom cards for a couple years now, and he, does have some increasingly good wins. First, he was, winning on the regional scene, picking up first international silver 140-pound titles, then British and Commonwealth super lightweight titles. And his three most recent wins are against Sam Maxwell, Waleed Wiesa, much lower level fighter, and Jose Zepeda. Yeah, that Jose Zepeda. That one was an eye-opener because that was seen to be the significant step up in competition for Dalton Smith. I know that by that point, Zepeda had recent losses to Regis Prograis by stoppage. Richards and Hitchens, Zepeda got outboxed almost every round. So he had lost 2 out of his last 3 fights. But this was the same Jose Zepeda that fought an even fight with Jose Ramirez. I mean, just 3-4 years ago, Jose Zepeda was a top 4-ish guy at 140. But once he got in the ring with Dalton Smith, it was shocking how much Dalton Smith was controlling the action against the pretty crafty and hard-hitting southpaw Jose Zepeda. Dalton Smith ended up doing a number to Zepeda's body, and he stopped him, knocked him out with the body shot in the 5th round. This one didn't even go into the second half of the fight. So that was one of those, whoa, performances for Dalton Smith. And then he had one more fight against Waleed Wiesa, knocking him out in the 1st round. That was one of the worst demonstrations of defense I've seen in a while. Waleed Wiesa was just target practice for Dalton Smith. And now Dalton Smith's about to fight Mathieu Germain, who's got a 26-2 record with 1 draw. And although I'm gonna talk about this matchup, I'm gonna make this video a little bit more about Dalton Smith because he's this prospect who's, starting to get a good amount of shine. And this is in one of the funnest divisions in boxing right now, just in terms of the depth of talent. 140's got it going on. 140 and how 154, super deep division, 140 same way. And what's interesting about Dalton Smith's style is that right now at 140, you've got a lot of defensive specialists, or at least people who are essentially point fighters, who do get some stoppages, but are mostly sweet science boxers who fight off of the proverbial back foot. You've got Richards and Hitchens, you've got Jack Catterall, you've got Arnold Barbosa, Devin Haney, Sandra Martin, and you've got Alberto Puello, who Dalton Smith is actually the mandatory for Alberto Puello's WBC title. So unlike the fighters that I just mentioned, Dalton Smith is a pretty aggressive fighter. He's looking to land that right hand or that left hook. Pretty good 2-fisted fighter. He's got some good hand speed, and he's good at his punch selection. Like he'll go 2 and then put the lead hand, the 1 on top of that. He'll jab to the body well. He mixes up his punch patterns, I think, pretty well. And quite frankly, if you're not on the level with him physically, you might just get smoked. He's one of those types of talents. If you are not ready for his hand speed and that power in that right hand, you might get smoked. And again, it's not just the right hand. And it's interesting, Dalton Smith is from Sheffield, England. That's the hometown of Kell Brook. They actually have some similarity in their games, and I find that kind of cool and fascinating. But yeah, Dalton Smith is one of the guys who, again, is outside of the ring, top 10 at 140, but I kind of believe that he could beat a couple of these top 10 guys. Like, I would be real curious to see how he would do against Alberto Puello, who he would be challenging for the title. I would also love to see him against other aggressive guys. You know how I mentioned the back foot guys at 140? How about the more aggressive guys? Subriel Matias, Gary Antoine Russell. I would love to see either one of them against Dalton Smith, but I think he's gonna take his time a little bit before he goes there. Although Alberto Puello, beat Gary Antoine Russell just before Antoine Russell had a career best performance recently against Jose Valenzuela. But yeah, I like Dalton Smith. Like, he's pretty fun to watch. Again, I look at him as being a pretty talented, physically talented fighter with some power, with some speed. So yeah, he's one of those guys who's on the come up who I'm pretty high on in terms of his, where his ceiling might be. I think that we might be talking about a future champion in Dalton Smith. But here he's going to be fighting Mathieu Germain. And I can tell you, look, Germain isn't one of those names that, casual or even medium to somewhat serious boxing fans are aware of. Most people don't know about Mathieu Germain. I mean, he's been fighting regionally in Canada for almost all his career. But from a regional standpoint, he's a good fighter. Like, I mean, he's beating Steve Claggett, that guy who kept coming forward against Teofimo Lopez. Mathieu Germain has a decision win against Steve Claggett, but he's also been knocked out by Uriel Perez and by Yves Ulysses. Not exactly the biggest names, but both of these guys stopped Mathieu Germain. So he is vulnerable, but here's what I'll say about what I've observed from him. He's a good boxer, like a sweet science boxer. He's pretty slick. He kind of has like, that kind of like lean style. He thinks that he could, out quick you from range, out jab you, kind of, move and avoid some of your shots, kind of be able to pick his spots and then splash on you with a quicker trigger than you've got towards him. He's fairly athletic and he's pretty versatile. Like, he can mix it up and get physical. Like, I saw him, lift a couple fighters, off the canvas where, you kind of lift them up, wrestle and put them on your shoulder. He does some of that stuff. If you try to muscle him, he's got some of that. So he's not just a sweet scientist who doesn't want to get his hands dirty on the inside. So he is pretty versatile. He's got a pretty, good fight IQ. Like, he's beaten some heavy-handed come forward guys. Again, Steve Claggett. And that's a part of a current 8-fight win streak that he's on right now. So he's got momentum going his way. He's got good experience, at least, relatively speaking, but he is also 35 years old. And again, he's been stopped twice. So look, I think that if we are expecting another Dalton Smith performance like he had against Waleed Wiesa, I think you might be surprised. I don't think he's just going to come in here and smoke Mathieu Germain. I think Germain's actually going to box pretty well with him in those first few rounds. And I think that Dalton Smith's going to be respectful of what's coming back. So I don't think he's just going to, set him up with the big rights and just get him out of there in like 3 to 5 rounds. This is going to take some time. I don't think Smith will visibly separate himself and just outclass Germain within the first few rounds. I think that this is going to be fought somewhat, if not evenly, very competitively through the first few rounds. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if Mathieu Germain wins multiple rounds in the first half of the fight. But I do think that at a point, Dalton Smith is going to start picking up the activity, start looking to exchange more frequently when they get into the middle and then the late rounds. And in doing so, I think that at a point, he'll start backing Germain up like more regularly over time. Like, I don't think he's going to, again, establish himself like that early. But over time, we're talking like 6th, 7th round. I think you're going to start seeing Germain look like he's kind of wearing those body shots. Again, Dalton Smith mixes it up and goes to the body with hard punches. I think he's going to start breaking the 35-year-old down through the middle rounds. And I was going to say Mathieu Germain, because of his experience, because of his, again, his technical ability, he's a good boxer, that he's going to take Dalton Smith the distance. And I'm still tempted to go there. You know what? I'm going to stick with that. I was going to flip it back over and say, but Dalton Smith, I could see him pouring it on and eventually breaking down, wilting and stopping Mathieu Germain. But no, I think that this huge underdog, by the way, like, these odds are ridiculous. Dalton Smith's a minus 1,200. You might want to, just for the hell of it, I mean, you'll probably be wasting your money really, but Mathieu Germain's at a plus 850. He can potentially, yes, it is difficult to see him coming out with a decision win over Dalton Smith in Dalton Smith's hometown of Sheffield, not just England, but Sheffield, England. I don't think that's gonna happen. But the odds are wider than I think their abilities are. Like, I don't think Dalton Smith is minus 1,200 better than Mathieu Germain, but he is a lot younger. He, again, hits really hard. But I think Mathieu Germain's going to exceed expectations. And, things have been going almost too well for Dalton Smith. He's going to need a tougher fight. I think this will be a tougher fight for him. I mean, again, his last 3 wins, stopping Sam Maxwell in 7 rounds, stopping Jose Zepeda in 5 rounds, then smoking Waleed Wiesa in 1 round. This, I don't think, is going to be that. I think that Mathieu Germain is actually going to go, not only, this isn't a 10-rounder, this is a 12-rounder. I think Mathieu Germain is going to actually take him the distance. And this won't look like Dalton Smith's best performance. Again, I think that this, Zepeda, reputation-wise and career-wise, is the best guy that Dalton Smith has fought, like, on paper. But given where, I still don't know what exactly to make of that win over Zepeda. Like, Zepeda had, again, lost a couple times recently, and he has come back in the ring and stopped, a nearly shot Ivan Redkach early on one of those Pro Box TV cards. Zepeda did that to Ivan Redkach after getting stopped by Dalton Smith. But I'm still not sure what to make of stopping Zepeda. It was impressive. He's, again, stopped him to the body in 5 rounds. Most people don't do that to Jose Zepeda. So again, I think Dalton Smith might be a special talent, but I think that this will be a fight where he doesn't look like he's one of boxing's shiniest new prospects. I don't think this will be that fight. I think Dalton Smith's going to be taking the decision. I think he'll still win a unanimous decision, but I think it's going to be a little rugged. I don't think he's just going to flat out cleanly outbox Mathieu Germain, but I think he's going to win something like 116, 112, 117, 111. You might have one super wide scorecard, and it's like, what the hell was that? You might get that. But, just like how Boots had a couple less than impressive performances, most recently against Karen Chukagian in that rematch. Well, we saw what Boots did after that against an even better fighter, at least on paper, a better fighter in Stanionis. And I know Mathieu Germain isn't a name that rings right now, but I think that Mathieu Germain will fight better than expected against Dalton Smith, and he's going to take him the distance. But yeah, I'm going Dalton Smith here. Let me know your thoughts on Dalton Smith. I think, again, he's a very talented fighter. He's fun to watch, and I think that he's going to be a top 8-ish guy, top 6 guy in the division sooner rather than later. Although I really haven't thought too far into what Alberto Puello versus Dalton Smith would look like. Puello's a pretty good fighter too, and he's got multiple wins against very credible opponents. Most recently, that super close win over Sandor Martin, but I haven't thought too deeply into that one. But if Dalton Smith wins this one against Germain, we can almost expect to see Alberto Puello versus Dalton Smith. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Dalton Smith will just smoke Mathieu Germain, or do you think this will be surprisingly competitive? And who would you like to see Dalton Smith fight in the top 10 besides Alberto Puello? Let me know how you think he would do against Puello, but who else would you like to see in that 140 mix against Dalton Smith? Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.